So, hello everyone. My name is Radek. I work in Salsita, and my today's presentation is about Strapi, which is a headless content management system. What is a content management system? It's a piece of software that's usually used to create and manage websites. It's used by two groups of users. One is the IT professionals like us, who install the software on a server and maintain it. They create the data models, the hierarchy, and they select a pre-built template that comes with the CMS system, and they can modify it, or they can build their own custom template for the front-end website. So basically the UI, the navigation, how the website is going to look and work and feel. And often at least for the most popular CMS systems today, the IT professionals have to know PHP and be willing to work in it. The other group is the users, the editors of the content. So those are usually people that don't have that much IT knowledge or virtually no IT knowledge. All they need to do is be able to type on a computer and create the content. And the CMS provides them with an easy way to add and modify the data. So if they have a website with news, they can easily add or modify news stories, blog posts, recipes, whatever the target of the website is, they can manage the content easily. So the data input by these editors, together with the templates and all that is set up in the CMS, ultimately exposes and creates the website that is then accessible from the internet, obviously. Some of the major CMS systems today include WordPress. I think everyone has heard of it, Joomla, and many more. So how is Strapi different and what are its features? Strapi is headless. So what that means, it means that it doesn't offer you a way to set up your front-end templates or anything like that. It doesn't care about that. It doesn't want you to do that. It just you set up the models as you would in a regular CMS, and the editors can input the data as they would in a regular CMS, but that's it. And then it just exposes an API, and that means that you can write your front-end app in basically in anything you want, and just connect it to the API, and you have a separation of the CMS and of the front-end app. And there can be multiple and other API consumers, whatever you want, just your standard API as you're used to. The good thing, at least for us, is that it's written in Node.js and React, and it's open source, hosted on GitHub. It's fully extensible and customizable. So if you don't like something or want some feature added for some reason, you can either just modify the implementation on your end, or you can even, as I said, it's an open source project. They're happy for contributions, so you can even create PRs into the repo of Strapi, and if you have some feature that you think would be beneficial to everyone, they will be happy to take a look at it. It obviously uses some database, and it supports Postgres, Mongo, SQLite, and some others. And you don't really ever have to care about the database. It just does the magic below, and it shields you from the database completely. And it exposes a REST API by default, but it also supports GraphQL easily. And so today's sorry, it doesn't work. Okay. Today's presentation will be mostly about working with it, getting to know it, what it can do. So let's get to the demo. So this is the Strapi's website. I'm not going to go through it really. Just click on the Get Started button. And here you can see some, they call it starters, which together with Strapi, also includes some pre-made example of a blog page or whatever built in all different technologies. But so you can easily get started with everything. But we are gonna just use the standalone Strapi without any front end, because, as I say, we would expect the front end to be built separately. And yeah, so what you do to install Strapi usually is this, but I already did that because it takes some time. Please note the quick start option, which makes the installation not ask any questions. If you didn't use that, it would ask you about what port you want the server to run on, what database you want to use, and so on. So this just does it. It uses the default for the database. It's the SQLite, which is completely satisfactory, at least for this this presentation. So I already did that. It created the. I ran this command in Git Playgrounds folder. It created this directory with all this content. So I opened it in WebStorm, and let's take a look at what it created. Some cache and temporary folder. We don't care about that. So it created an API folder, which is empty now. Okay. It created build. Okay, this is full of build stuff. It created a config folder, which some nested things. What could be interesting? Database. So here you can configure the database. So easily you can change it if you want to into something else. Here you can configure the server, the port, some other things. Okay, looks interesting. Here are extensions. One of the extensions that comes by default is users permissions, which is a bit weird because actually users and permissions is like, I would say, a core functionality of Strapi, but probably for historic reasons or simply the way they develop it, it's still used as an extension. So probably you could just delete it and it would still work. But you will see in later how useful it is. Then you have the public folder, which with the uploads folder, where you can also upload pictures, for example, or the editors can upload pictures to the CMS. So if they have the website about recipes, apart from the recipe itself, obviously they also want to show a picture of the finished meal. So the pictures they would upload would then be stored and served to the front end from here. That also can be customized. It supports AWS S3, and you can do lots of stuff with it. And then a bunch of files, most of which you are probably used to, and the node modules folder where the whole Strapi basically lives. Again, you don't really do anything with package.json here. You don't install modules on your own, really. It's just taken care by it was taken care by the installation process. Everything that is here has been installed by that. Okay, so let's run it. Okay, so this is the first page that opens. It asks you to create an account. So okay, so I will whatever. I will use just my name. Please don't tell anyone I use this password everywhere. Okay, I need to enter a number. Okay, so as I happen to know, it will require some more things, so I will add some. Yeah. Okay, so this is how the homepage of Strapi looks like. This is what's going to be used both by the IT professionals and by the users. So you can set up the collections and everything here, and then the users use it to create the data. Obviously, when you run it for them, you don't use this Strapi develop, because this allows you to modify the structures and everything. You would just run it differently so that they cannot break anything, that they could just enter the data. And so here you have your collection types, some plugins, some general like settings, marketplace, join the community. Okay, but clearly the biggest call to action button here is the create your first content type. So okay, so let's do that. Create a collection type. So let's say we want to store and then display on our front end pages with dogs, right? Okay, so we create a collection with display name dogs. Let's take a look at the advanced settings. What is there? Draft publish system. This is a fairly new thing that's been added to Strapi actually, and it allows the editors to, for example, when they want to add a dog into the collection and they have like almost all the information about dog, but they have not yet had the time to write like something about the dog, like the description of the dog, they can still partially enter the data and just not publish it. And then at the end, once they have everything, they can publish it, and then only it starts to appear in the API. It also bypasses any like checks that some fields may be required or anything. So this bypasses it until you actually hit publish. You can input anything you want. Okay, so let's create docs and select a field for your collection type. So what do we want to store and eventually display about our docs? So definitely. Okay, so let's go back. Here are all the data types that Strapi supports. So let's start with text. And we want to store the docs names. Short text, long text. Short text is best for titles and names. Okay, so that's good. Advanced settings, you can set the default value. You can also set a regular expression that will basically disallow saving a dog's name if it doesn't pass the test of the regular expression. But we are not gonna use that now. I mean, yeah. You can also set the field to be private so that it doesn't show up in the API response. You can set it as required, unique. You can limit the length of everything. I'm not gonna bother with any of this. Let's just simply create a name field. Let's add another field, which could be the breed of the dog. So another short text. We can also have rich text. So they call it rich text, but it's not really rich text. In the end, they used Markdown, but it can be good for when you want to give the editor some power about the formatting, which is not always a good thing because they could break your visuals of the front end, but whatever. So we can use it for description of the dog. Number, well, I guess that's not very useful now. You can add a date. So okay, so let's add a date field with the date of birth of the dog, and let's choose the type is date. Boolean, well, also not particularly useful now. Relation, we'll talk about it later. So we will about component dynamic zone for now. Email, okay, docs don't have emails, so password, no, not really. Enumeration, yeah, we can use that probably for storing the dog's gender. So let's these are the values that the editors are going to be able to select from in a typical dropdown. So okay, male, female, I guess other, when you want to reuse it for some animals which are like snails or stuff, I think they have both of the genders, whatever. Let's not get into biology here. What else is there? Media. Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, we want to add pictures of our dogs. We want people to see the dog. So pictures or pictures, multiple media. Yeah, we can include multiple pictures of the dog. We could also select single media, then the editor would only be able to upload one picture, but why not allow more? Here you can also select the allowed types of media. So if I didn't limit it, it would also allow to upload videos into pictures and other files, which is not probably what we want. So let's just limit it to images. And I guess that's it. Yeah, JSON UID, not very useful now. Okay, so now we have a docs collection with all these fields defined. So let's save it. And we can see that it's waiting for restart. So what this does, what the save button does, is that it writes all this into a configuration file and then forces Strapi to restart, so that it starts again with this configuration in mind, and it is ready to accept your docs. Here in the collection types, you could enter docs. We'll get to that later. So let's check what it actually did. It created a new folder, API docs. So let's see what is in there. API docs, some 4 folders. Let's go through that. So in the config folder, you have the root JSON file, which defines the routes that your API is gonna have. So for the docs, in your API, you will have a docs endpoint for the get method to get all the docs there are. You can also use this count to count all the docs, the number of them. You can get one particular doc and post, obviously, to create docs, put to update, delete to delete the usual stuff. Then in controllers, you have this file, which is now basically empty, and it's your standard controls and services here as well. You can, if you want, you can tap into the way that Strapi does things. So, for example, if you okay, let's go here. If the user of the API tries to access this endpoint, it will use this handler, find one, which is defined internally somewhere in Strapi. But you can also override it and make it do your own stuff if you want, for some reason. So if you want your find one handler to return not one doc, but 2 doc, because you want to mess with the front-end developers, right? They would expect to get only 1 doc back from here. But if you want to return 2, you could do that, mess with them, okay, or anything else you might want to do. Then the last folder is the models folder, which in here you can tap into the lifecycle hooks of the model of the data, basically. And that's okay. Let's check. Let's check this. They are nice to include the links to the documentation in the relevant parts of the generated code. So that's nice. And lifecycle hooks. So what you can do with the data, you can find one, create, update, delete, count, search, count, search. And all of these have these before find, after find, before find one, after find one hook. And so you can also tap into that. And like, for example, before create, before update, it's useful to do validation of the data. Of course, as you could see, Strapi does some sort of validation on its own. So if you limit the length of the data, it would not allow the editor to save a doc with a name that is longer than the max length. But for example, if you want to, do any kind of other validation, you could do it in this file by overriding these before create and after create methods. So you would basically do something like this, before create, and then here you would write your code. Okay, and then the final file is this doc setting JSON, which actually describes the model that we created in the UI. So aside from some settings and the basic info, you have the attributes here. So you have the name, the breed, types, description, type rich text, date of birth, gender, pictures. Yeah. Okay, so let's commit the docs. Add docs. Okay, so now we don't only want to store dogs, but we also want to store, where is it? We want to store cats. So cats, they also have a name, breed, description, date of birth, gender, pictures. Okay, so we could go and create a new collection type and do everything that we did for dogs here. Or we can be a bit more smart about it and basically copy this folder, paste it, rename it to cats, and rename some files and some strings. So okay, so we have the docs JS file here. So let's rename it to cats. Shift F6, rename this to cats. Shift F6, cat settings JSON services cats. So that's the files, and now we also need to rename the content. So everywhere there will be some occurrences of dog. So let's first take the big uppercase dog. Okay, let's replace dog and replace it with cat. And then also the lowercase dog and replace it with cat. Replace all, yeah. And now take a look at what happens. Oh no, our server went down. Why? Look at this. Let's look at this. Duplicated collection name docs. Okay. So what Strapi does is that whenever you make any change to these files or to any files here, it reloads. And when it restarts, it loads the configuration and tries to set itself according to it. Even if you add a collection and it's missing the tables in the database, it tries to create the table, right? So I guess that's what it tried to do, but there already is a model doc, or it tried to create something internally. So that's because I initially copied docs and pasted it. And that's when the server tried to restart and it crashed. So now it's crashed, but now I've renamed all the files and everything. So maybe if we start it again, it will be fine. Yeah, okay, it seems to have started and no errors. So let's refresh. That may take some time, I guess. Hopefully not too much. No idea what's going on here, frankly. This should work in the administration. Okay. Let's shut it down and start it again. Sorry about this. Obviously, that has not happened when I was preparing the presentation. No errors, nothing. Okay, so what about, I don't know, deleting cats? Maybe we don't really need them for the next parts of the presentation, so maybe it will start without them. I really have no idea what's happening here. Okay, for some reason it doesn't like our cats. But it used to work and it should work. So maybe I did something wrong. Maybe the universe doesn't like me at this particular moment. So you have to believe me that if I did that, it would create another collection type called cats here. Okay, so let's go on. So, okay, imagine imagine if we had cats here, or if we added another type of animal, you know, whatever you can think of. Sorry. They would also share these properties, right? Probably every animal would have something like this. So if you add more animal types, you don't want to repeat all this every time, set it for every animal. So thankfully Strapi has the notion of component. So you can create a component and then reuse it in your collection. So let's create a component. We will call it basic animal props. You have to create a category for the component. So let's call it animal components. And you have to give it some icon. So whatever, let's use this. Advanced settings, collection name. Yeah, so you can also override the name of the collection in the database. So they call it collection. This is a notion from MongoDB. Obviously, this translates into tables for SQL databases. But if you already have a table for some reason and it has a different name and you just want to tie this collection or tie this component into that, you can do that in the advanced settings. But let's not bother with that now. And in here we could create the basic animal prop. So everything that all animals you think would share. So name. What else was there? What else was there? What else do we have for the? Okay, I shouldn't have done that. Name, breed, date of birth. Okay, so let's start again. Basic animal props. Animal components. Create, continue. Okay, so name. That's a date of birth. It's the same thing we did before for dogs. Okay, pictures. Let's limit it again to just images. Finish. Those are not all of them, but to save time, let's just add these three and you save it. And then you go back to your dogs and to cats if they would be here, and you can add the collection as a field. So the same way we before added all these, we can add another field, and we select the component, the collection type component. And here it even offers you to create a new component right here, but we have already created it before. So we use an existing component, select a component, and we select the basic animal props. We call the field basic props, repeatable or single component. Yeah, single. We only want the editors to fill this in once for each animal. It's repeatable doesn't make sense really. And we finish it. And now you can see that with your dogs, you have these basic props with name, date of birth, and pictures. So we can delete it from here. Name, date of birth, pictures. Obviously, these three would also probably belong to basic props, but let's forget about that now. And we would add the same basic props to cats and any other potential animal type that we would have. We save the dogs. And let's commit it. Commit add basic animal props. So one thing that is worth noting that happens if you do something like this is that if you already had some docs created previously with their name and date of birth and picture set, because you changed the structure now, the original data would be lost, though not completely because Strapi never really deletes anything from the database. It just, as we saw before, you change the configuration, you save it, it updates it in these JSON files, and then it starts again, and it doesn't yet have any database structure for any of this. So it creates it, and it's empty, right? And the old data that are there, it doesn't know about it anymore because it's not in the configuration anymore. So it just leaves it there, leaves it be. But the data are still there, but Strapi doesn't know about them. The API will not return them or anything. So you have not completely lost the data, but somehow. So the editors would have to recreate the data for their docs that they may already have. Or you could somehow create your own mechanism of doing a migration whenever you change the data like this. Strapi doesn't really do that. They don't support these types of changes yet, or migrations for them, though there is some development in that area I've seen. So maybe in the future, but for now you would have to take care of it yourself. But probably it's best to not do it, right? To be pretty sure that the structure of your data is final before you hand it over to the client to actually create the data. Okay, so another type of field was a repeatable component. So we selected these basic props as a component. We selected that single type. So what are the repeatable types? So it can be useful, for example, for when you want to store something about the dogs that can repeat itself, right? So for example, vaccinations. So the dogs get vaccinated multiple times, I think. I'm not a vet, nor have I ever owned a dog, but I would assume that. So yeah, so you can create a component. You can call it vaccinations animal components, and you give it an icon. Yeah, this one seems fitting a bit. Continue and vaccination. So you want to probably store the name of the vaccine that was administered. Vaccine name, short text is probably sufficient. And you want to store the date when the vaccine was administered. So date of vaccination. Date. And that's pretty much it. And you can save this component, and then go back to your dogs or would-be cats or anything else, and you can add it here as another field. Again, select component, use an existing component, and select the component vaccinations and set it as repeatable. So not single as we did before, repeatable, best for multiple instances. Okay, so vaccinations, that's the field name, finish. And now the dog has component repeatable of vaccinations, vaccine name, date of vaccination. Cats would have the same if I was able to create them. So let's save the dogs. Let's commit it. Add vaccinations. And now let's finally show how records are created. So let's create a doc, or a few of them. Let's see. Okay, so you go to collection, you go add new docs, and you fill it in. This is what the editors will do. So they have a new doc, so they fill in the breed, they fill in the description. This is a very nice dog. And because we set it as rich text, which in reality is Markdown, it allows them to do this formatting as we talked about, so bold and all other things that you would think is supported. You can also preview it. Select the gender, so yeah, basic props. Oh, okay. It would probably be better to have these basic props, the name and the date of birth, somewhere near the top right. Let's take a look at it then, but let's give the dog a name, a date of birth. Let's upload some picture. Browse. This is the gallery of Strapi. That all the pictures from the uploads folder that I showed you before would appear here. There are none here. So you can let's upload some from computer from URL. Okay, so let's select from URL and let's find some nice picture of a Labrador. Okay, this one will do, I think. Yeah, that's a nice picture. Copy image address. Where are we? No. Here. From URL, next. Ah, okay, done. Upload one asset to the library. Finish. And now it has been added to this particular Salsita doc. Vaccinations. This is the repeatable component that we have added. And so you can click this add new entry as many times as you wish. So, and each represents a different vaccination. So what was it vaccinated against? I don't know, some worms. In September, COVID, yeah, obviously I had to do that. Sorry. So let's save 2 vaccinations. And we have our first doc. Right, so before we talked about moving the basic props somewhere up, so that's the first thing that the editors see and configure. So you can use this configure the view here and easily move the basic props to the top, save it. This is rather, yeah, this will modify all your settings. It seems like you are doing something dangerous, but not really. It just changes the order. And now if you go to docs and add new docs, you can see the basic props are at the top. This is not something you can do in configuration, or at least I think you cannot. Like, I mean, with the JSON files, it's stored in the database. So yeah, if you want to change it on your local environment and also in production sometime later, you have to do it manually through the UI in this way. So, and now let's look at the API, or maybe add another doc. Let's quickly add another doc. Doc 2. Let's not worry too much about the props. Woof. Gender, no vaccinations. It's a new doc, freshly born. See, just 2 days ago. So we have 2 docs. So let's go to check the. Let's open a new tab and check the docs. 403 forbidden. Okay. So, and that's where the users and permissions extension will come to play. So you have to give yourself permissions to be able to access the docs. So you go to settings and you go to users and permissions plugin roles, and it differentiates between authenticated and public. You can also create a new role or type of users. For now, we are just public users. And we give ourselves this is docs, and we give ourselves the permissions to find docs, find one docs. That's enough for now. We don't want to give ourselves unnecessary permissions, right? So you save it, and we refresh, and it's empty. Why is it empty? Well, of course, that's because of the publishing system. So see, they are both drafts. So I have to publish them in order for them to appear in the response. I publish both docs, refresh again, and you get this nice JSON with the response. So we have an array of objects which represent the docs. You have an ID, the breed, the description with the markdown, the gender, published at, created at, updated at, basic props, name, date of birth, pictures, and Strapi is even nice enough to when you upload a picture, it will create all different formats like thumbnail and small. This is not an overly big picture, so it just created these two. But if you upload a really big picture, it would probably also create medium and large and everything. And then you have the array of vaccinations as we edit. And here you have the second object with your dog. Obviously, you can do something like this to get just the first dog, your standard RESTful API as you are used to. Okay, so now let's think of what we've built here as an animal shelter. So the animal shelter, besides the individual pages for each of the animals, they also want to have an info page, like the home page, basically, with some information about the animal shelter. And they want to, on the info page, they want to have headlines and paragraphs and pictures and tables and videos and links and whatnot. And they want to have all of those in any amount and in any order. And they want to be able to edit all this dynamically as much as they want, always add new stuff if they want. So how do we create something that will, like, this seems pretty complicated, right? So, but the Strapi thankfully has a solution, and it's called dynamic zones. And let's see how that works. So first, let's create some new components. So we talked about giving them the possibility to add headlines to the page. So you have to choose some icon. It doesn't let you to continue without choosing one. So I'm just clicking pretty much randomly now. So you create a component for headline. It doesn't really fit here. So let's create a new category called info page components, and add headlines component. The headline has text, okay, and what can it have? Text size, number format, integer, okay. Finish. That's our headline component. Let's save it. Then they wanted to have a component for paragraphs, for example. So let's add another component for paragraph. This looks like a good icon for paragraphs. Info page component. The paragraph has, maybe let's add rich text. So paragraph text. Finish. Save. And the last thing let's add tables. So let's add a table, or tables. I don't know if I made it in plural before or not, whatever. I happen to know that there is a nice icon representing a table here a bit. And we add it to info page components, continue. Select a field for a component. Okay, so what do we want our tables to have? The editors will want to add rows into the table, and each of the row has to have some number of columns, right? So how do we represent rows? Well, with another component. So let's create another component, call it table rows. So plural, obviously. Let's give it whatever. Info page component. Let's configure it. And we are adding it into table. So this is the field name of the rows in the table component. So let's call it just rows. And let's make it repeatable, because you want to give the editors the possibility to add as many rows as possible. So finish. And now we have a component. Okay, let's save this. Save the table. We have a component table rows, which is reference from table. So in table rows, we want to add the columns. So you would think you can add another component, right? So in here, in table component, if we do this, it allows us to select the component, but here in table rows, it doesn't. So that's weird. But the reason is that Strapi somehow wants to prevent you from nesting the components too much, or at least the UI wants to prevent you from doing that. So because it knows that this table rows component is already referenced here in table, it will simply not offer you to add another component as a child here. But thankfully there is a solution, and that is doing it through the configuration. So sometimes you can do things through the UI. Sometimes it's only possible, or maybe easier, to create it through the configuration here. So we take a look at the components folder, info page components. Let's open table and table rows. So table has these attributes called rows, which is type component, and it references this table rows, and table rows has nothing. So we need to add the columns here somehow. So let's just create a component table columns, whatever, and let's add text to it. This will be the text of the actual component, of the actual column. Finish and save. And now table columns appears. It has the text as an attribute. And so just as rows are referenced here in table, we need to reference columns here in rows. So we call it columns. Type stays the same, repeatable true, yeah. And we reference the newly created columns component. Was it singular or plural? Columns. Okay. Nope. Save it. And let's refresh it. And what happens? Table columns with just text. Okay. Table rows. Ah, good. It has the columns as repeatable component, and each column has a text. And if you go to table, it has rows, that has columns, and that has a text. So great. So let's create our single type with the info page. It's pretty much the same as collection type, but it will only be like one instance. So info page, continue. And this is where the dynamic zone comes to play. See, sometimes it has some issues, right? But they are working on it a lot. They are making it better. So this is just a question of time before they fix this. So dynamic zone, let's call it the field components. Add components to the zone. So we have already created a component, so we use an existing component and select the component. So we select the three that we edit: headlines, paragraph, table. These are really just, utility components, sort of. So we don't want the editors to add them separately. So let's just add these three. Finish. Save it. And now a single types section has appeared here with the info page. So let's go there. And this lets you configure the info page. And here's the plus button, add to component. So you click it, and it will ask you to pick one. This is what the editors will do. This is how they set up the info page. So, okay, so let's start with a headline. I want to have a headline on my info page first, and then I want a paragraph, and then I want another headline, and then I want a table, and so on. I could go on like this. This is boring, just text, text size, text, text, text. What is interesting a bit here is the table. So it has 0 rows, add an entry. So this adds a new row. Now we have 1 row, and in the row you can add columns, and that lets you add the text. So first row, first column, add another entry or this one. So this one adds columns, this one adds rows. Okay, so second column. And you can add rows, blah, blah, blah. You can add as much as you want of anything, which, as you may think, is not that great for tables, right? Tables should probably have the same amount of columns in each row. And yeah, there is no way in Strapi to configure something this, custom. So that's exactly what those services and controllers come in play. These files here, where you can override, or rather here, where you can override the functions, and you can do your validation here. So you can check that that each row of the table has the same amount of columns, and fail the validation if it doesn't. So we publish it, and time is running out, I can see. Well, let's go on and let's see what happens. So we published our info page. So let's take a look at how it looks in the API info page. Of course, 403 forbidden. So let's go to settings, roles, public, info page, find, save. See, it doesn't have find one or find, it just has find because it's only a single type. There is only one. And when you refresh it, you get this. So this is the array of components. Oh, I made a typo here. Okay, so headlines, or this is the headline. It references the component and the data for the component. So for headlines, we have text and text size. For paragraph, we have just text. For table, we have all this. And it's ordered in the way that it has been added into the headline. So obviously the users can reorder it. If they say want to make the table first, they just move it like this, save it, and see here the headline is first. And if I refreshed it and the table is first, the front end can easily, by the order of the objects in the array, can tell what goes first and so on. Okay, what next? Yeah, okay, so let's think. Let's consider that our shelter has branches. One in Prague, one in Ostrava, for example. So let's create a new collection type called branches. Let's give it a name. Let's give each branch a name, and this is the last thing that is left to show the relations. So each of the branch will have some dogs and cats if we had them in their shelter, right? So the branch, we want to create a relation to dogs. So this is the type of the relation. So branch has one dog. No, that's not enough. Branch has and belongs to one dog. Not really. Branch belongs to many dogs. No. Dog has many branches. No. Branches has and belongs to many dogs. Not really either. Branch has many dogs. Yes, that's what we want. Okay, so branch has many dogs. Finish. Now we have defined our branch with a name and relation to dogs. I could also add cats here, but let's not get back to that. So now when you save it, another collection type will appear here, branches. And you can, of course, create a branch with the name Prague. And here on the right-hand side, you can set your relations with the dogs. Unfortunately, both appear the same. I don't know why. I guess that's because of the breed. It used to show IDs here, but whatever. They are both different, even though they have the same breed. So let's save it. And now the branch has 2 dogs. Of course, we need to publish, and we need to give ourselves permission to find branches. Save. And now when you go to branches, so you have array of branches. We only have one, but that's fine. Name proc, the usual stuff, and it has an array of docs as you would expect. Nicely, what is this word? Expanded. Nicely expanded information about the docs. Here is the second doc. But the expansion doesn't go like on forever. That would probably not even be wanted. So let's take a look at one last thing to what happens if we add a best friend field to a doc, and we add it as a relation to other docs. So we add docs. Dog has one dog. Yeah, okay. We call it best friend. We finish, we edit, save. And now when you go to a doc, the first one, we can, so let's assume this second one is the second one. So we can add the second one as this dog's best friend. So let's save it and let's check now what there is. When you get docs, it would probably expand, but when you get branches, it's way too nested for Strapi to expand it here. So as you can see here, we just got 2, which is the ID of the second doc. So what do we do when we want to do just one query of our API with getting the branches, but also get all the docs and all of their best friends expanded in one request, right? And unfortunately, we have not been able to find a way how to do it with the REST API. And thankfully, Strapi easily supports GraphQL. It's just as easy as running yarns or npm Strapi install GraphQL. It takes some time. I already did that before. So, and just after one command, it exposes this GraphQL playground and lets you use the GraphQL API. So I have this here from before. Let's just type it again so that you can see. So I don't know if you are familiar with GraphQL. If not, then I'm sorry, there is no time here to go through that. But basically, you define in the query, you define exactly what you want your API to respond or to return. So we are interested in branches, and for each branch we want to get its name. We want to get all of its docs, and for each of the docs we want to get its name, which is hidden in this basic props. So name, and for each doc we also want to add this best friend. And for all of these best friends, we want to get their name too, which are again hidden in basic props. So here, this is the query, and if you run it, it returns this. It returns the branch. It returns the docs, and this dog has a best friend. This dog doesn't have a best friend. Sorry. And here it's nicely expanded all the way to the name of the second dog, which is different from what you could see before in the REST API response. Yeah, okay, so that's GraphQL. And I could show extensibility. I don't know, Alfred, maybe tell me if I should. It will be like 5 more minutes, maybe. Then I have a few more minutes for like the final 2 slides.
There are already quite a few questions to answer still.
Okay, so let's not worry about that. If anyone decides to use Strapi and wants to extend something, please reach out to me. I can tell you how, or of course you can easily find it on the internet. So that's it for the demo. Let's just go back to the presentation, last 2 slides. Yeah, so last slide, because this one was about overriding, so I will skip it for now. So as a review of Strapi, I guess after this, everyone can Okay, let's very quickly talk about extending, and just about the reason why you want to do that is that if your client wants something changed here in the CMS, like add a button here that deletes all the branches at one click, for example, you can do that with Strapi. You can just take the React code, modify it, and done. Okay, so that's it. That's why it's good to have extensions, because you can do all these things with it. So as a review, yeah, you can imagine how it can be useful. It probably isn't useful for every project, but for simple ones, it's pretty good. I have not shown you many features, including creating of cats and including extensions, sadly. We used it successfully about half a year ago or 9 months ago on a corporate project. We bent it quite a bit. I mean, the UI and everything. We had many different deeply nested components, many relationships between them. And so the database structure underlying had to be pretty crazy. But thankfully, you never have to see it. You don't care about what Strapi does to the database until you come to the point where you need to do migrations. But it's best to avoid that, right? If possible. And with all this, it just works. It works in production. We have not heard any complaints. The client editors were happy to use Strapi, were happy to configure their things in the UI that you've seen. It's probably not as customizable, obviously, as if you build something like that from scratch. Yeah, but the time save is huge. If you want it for a simple project, like for something we just did, for an animal shelter and a few pages on the front end, you can do it in one day easily, just production ready, probably. Okay, that's it. So, Alfred, should I go to Slido, or will you handle it?
I'll share it.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, so when will you go with Strapi, and when will you choose to use? Okay.
Sorry, hold on.
Your normal stack. Well, I guess it depends on the time frame of the project. That's one thing. It depends on the complexity of the project, as I said. So probably it's good to make an analysis of the actual project and of what will the backend have to do. If it's something like a blog or a site with recipes, I would probably go with Strapi. If it's something more complex, it's hard to tell like this without any research about what the project is really about, right? Okay, does it work with TypeScript? Frankly, I don't know, but I would assume so. We have not used TypeScript with it on the project. We used it 9 months ago, so I have not paid any I have not investigated it at all. But I think you can easily find the answer to that question on Google. Can you do DB optimization, indexing, and so on? I would assume so, but I don't know how well you could tie it into Strapi so that Strapi also uses the database in TS on their to-do list. Yeah, okay. Thanks, Stego. So really, the project that we did that we used it on was quite short and fast and pretty basic. So we didn't even, this was far from the requirement, any optimization of the database. But it uses your standard databases, so you can do all this stuff on them, obviously, but I don't know how well Strapi plays with it. Strapi, accessible. How would you rate overall maturity, documentation, and code base? Actually, pretty good. When we started on it 9 months ago, it was still in beta, I think. And during our time on the project, they released the production ready version, what they claim to be the production-ready version, and it really seems that way because it works. So I works well. We have not encountered any project problems, and the documentation is also quite vast. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen anymore. Okay. Yeah, and code base. Well, it's React. It's not like something you would modify often, so you don't really care about the code base that much. And if you do, you just bend it somehow so that it does what you want. So I have not created any PRs into the project either. So I am not really familiar with the code base of Strapi itself, but it's a new project. They definitely use the new React stuff like hooks and stuff. So they seem to be pretty up to date and good, yeah. If I used it in production, well, not me personally, but the client that we built it, that we used it for their project on, they are using it, I think, until now, and I think it works well for them. Yeah. Can you change the DB? Yeah, I believe so. In the middle of development, I believe so, because it's all just creating that one configuration file, just changing the DB. And when you restart Strapi after that, it will check the current configuration of all the collections and everything, and compare it to the database state. And if it doesn't match, it will recreate everything it needs in the new database. Obviously, the data transfer, you have to do that manually. Yeah. Major disadvantages of Strapi. Well, it's hard for me to compare it to other CMS, which is probably the only fair comparison there that I could do, because I have not used any other headless CMSs. I have not used WordPress either. I did a small thing in Joomla, and believe me, this is far better, but it's also a bit different use case, right? So yeah, I could say the disadvantage is that it's not fully customizable. It's not good for every project, but it's not even trying to be. It cannot be, right? So I think it's very good for what it is, and yeah, I would have to compare with other CMSs to be able to tell something about some real disadvantages compared to those, yeah. When will the COVID vaccine be available for my dog? Well, as far as I know, dogs cannot really get COVID, I think, unless, besides some inspections, maybe, so never. Are there many breaking changes, or it's mostly easy to update Strapi? There were some breaking changes when they moved from the beta version to the production version, but there was this question about documentation. They provided a very nice manual about what exactly it is that you need to do when going through this update. And it was really a work for a few hours or half a day, or I don't know. So no. And in between of the minor versions, I don't think they are trying to make it easy for their users, right? Because they also have some paid extensions, I think, and plugins. So they want to make the users happy. So their users wouldn't be happy if there were too many breaking changes. I have certainly not encountered any major breaking changes. So it's mostly easy, yes.
That's it for Slido questions. Are there any live questions people want to ask? It seems to be it then. Thank you, Radek.
Okay, thank you for your attention, and sorry for taking maybe a bit too long. Bye, everyone.